Hello, and welcome back to the paddock. Now that we have Bahrain, the first race over with and done with, thank God. I don't know what y'all think. But we are definitely excited to talk about it, so let's just go ahead and jump right in. On this episode, you have Ito, Casey, Melissa, and Amy, with LeAnne and myself, Hannah, behind the scenes. To start us off is Melissa with some updates.
All right, so it's the start of the season, and you're probably wondering, why aren't the races on a Sunday for the first two Grand Prix? Well, this was changed due to the combination of Ramadan, which begins later this week on March 10th, actually. So we'll be seeing FP1 and 2 on Thursday, FP3 and quali on Friday, and race on Saturday.
And you might now be wondering, why was Bahrain on a Saturday too, just because of Ramadan that's starting around Saudi time? Well, F1 has this rule that drivers, or races rather, because drivers don't really only race in the race, but basically the races have to be 7 days apart. So if Saudi is on a Saturday, Bahrain couldn't have been on the Sunday, because that would mean there would only be 6 days between the races.
Now, well, we don't have a ton of pre-race coverage that happened. We do have at least your quali results. So let's get into it, because quali, for me at least, was relatively interesting. In Q1, we lost Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu, Logan Sargent, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly. And this was just a really rough session for, as I have dubbed them, the Battle of the Baguettes, because Alpine was just struggling. And for people who don't listen to the F1 TV commentary team, you may have missed this fun fact. And that is that this is the first time that Alpine, or Renault, whatever you want to call them, has been the two slowest cars on the grid since Azerbaijan in 2016, when their driver pairing was Kevin Magnussen and Jolyon Palmer, which I just think that's kind of crazy. It also is the second year in a row that Pierre Gasly has started at the back of the grid at the start of the season, which just really breaks my heart for him, because that is some dark clouds following you.
Yeah, I bet Fernando and Oscar are smiling at the downfall of Alpine right now, because they really dodged a bullet there. Because apparently, right before the launch, Alpine's technical director, Matt Harmon, and their head of aero, Dirk de Beer, both quit. So I don't know how that's going for the team. Those seem like very important roles. I don't know who's filling them or what's going to happen. But it looks like there's still chaos at Alpine. And hopefully they get a car that's not, I don't know, horrible, but it's not looking good.
Actually, the funny part about the resignation, or potential resignation, I'm going to say, of Harmon and De Beer, is that Alpine, when they were asked about it in Bahrain, they declined to comment on it. So we don't actually have confirmation whether those two people resigned or not. We don't know what's happening. I mean, at this point, does Alpine know what's happening?
All I know is that the driver's reaction to seeing the team's car at their launch makes a lot more sense now. And who knows, maybe by next weekend, only Esty and Pierre will be in the Alpine garage with the way things are going. But also, who knows, they can have a McLaren like last year and completely turn around. We saw how rough of a start McLaren had last year and how they were able to turn it around. Was it easy to watch? No. But we did like the turnaround and everything and the comeback. So who knows, maybe Alpine will have such a comeback.
I definitely can see Alpine going from school bus to maybe something akin to a rocket, but not necessarily like a Red Bull rocket. I don't know. Time will tell. But for Q2, we lost Yuki, Lance, Alex, Danny, and K-Mag. Yes, people, that meant that Nico Hulkenberg made it to Q1, which I really didn't have on my bingo card for the start of the 2024 season, if I'm being really, really honest. Now, Q3, our top 10 shakes out as follows. Max in first, Charles in second, George in third, Carlos in fourth, Checo in fifth, Alonso in sixth. I love that we had all three Spanish speakers all like close together. Lando, Oscar, and Lewis. This was actually his worst ever starting position at Bahrain, like ever. And then Nico rounded us out in 10th. Not a super crazy shakeup for our top 10, but I definitely think my expectations of certain people were not met, let's say that.
Definitely not. But then again, you mentioned Nico making it into Q3. And honestly, at this point, I'm not too surprised when I see Nico in the top 10, as he's definitely proven last year that he can put that Haas into the top 10, at least in quali. Race pace is a different story. And that seemingly continues. I mean, it's great for Haas.
I just thought it was kind of amusing that we literally started where we left off, because the top three in quali were the exact same as the podium in Abu Dhabi last year. So back at it again.
Hey, at least they're consistent, Casey. I mean, it could have been worse. But I will say I love a first race when we have all, especially with the fact that this is a first race where we have all of the same drivers from the previous year. So it gives us something to compare it to. I, being a bit of a nerd, decided to compare and kind of look at post-race. How did Bahrain go last year and how did it go this year? Just because why not? And I just think it's really fun. I really had my heart broken when I saw that turn one incident with Nico Hülkenberg. I just feel like Nico in a race just cannot catch a break to save his life. And I don't know who cursed him, but I want to have some words.
Yeah, and it also kind of screwed over Lance and Valtteri as well, because both of them had pretty good starts before Lance got kind of whacked by Hulk. And then, Valtteri got caught up in that as well. His race, as we'll probably talk about later, definitely took a turn for the worse. But it wasn't a good start for anyone there. But no one retired from the incident. They all kept going, just at the back.
And then we have the how brave is he feeling? Oh, wait, he's not feeling all that brave. Where Charles was just like, is he going to go for it? Is he not? Does he have the guts to make the move? I have a love-hate when that happens. I want to see you send it. Just make the move. Just go for it. But I do have to say, I love that Charles is somebody that I can always count on to call out George Russell for literally anything. This case, it was track limits. But he will just always call George out, and it's fantastic. But if I'm going to have words with whoever cursed Nico, I really need to have words with Ferrari, because I seriously think I lost count at the number of lockups that Ferrari had within like the first 10 laps of this race. I have never seen that happen so much in one race for one specific team. It was just constant for him.
Honestly, I definitely lost count how many lockups happened, because it feels like he locked up in every single corner. And while it was a better start to the season for them being Ferrari than last year in terms of reliability, because who doesn't remember at the end of Bahrain last year, Charles says no over the radio, where he just pulled off to the side and got out of the car because the car stalled. They still definitely have their work cut out for them, especially with the brakes on Charles's car, because consistently throughout the race, he kept saying, if I'm braking, the car goes to the right, like veers to the right, meaning something is definitely wrong with the brakes. And everyone knows how dangerous that can be. So I'm actually kind of surprised in retrospect that they didn't retire the car, because that could have been a, excuse the language, shit show.
So it actually came out that there was about a 100-degree temperature difference between front left and front right for basically the whole race in Charles's car, which definitely made it difficult to drive. But honestly, props to Charles. That kind of just shows that he is a good driver, because he was able to bring that car home in P4 with basically a non-functioning car. Like when it comes to braking, he had to brake early, I believe, in a lot of the corners and adjust his driving style to basically make sure the car just doesn't break. And he brought it home. Like, he didn't have to retire. I don't know. Another driver might have had to. But hopefully Ferrari will definitely fix it. I think Carlos had some issues too, but his was just like general overheating, not like the weird imbalance issues. But yeah, definitely seems like something Ferrari needs to hopefully work on. But it's Ferrari, so we'll find out in Saudi Arabia.
In true Ferrari fashion, Ferrari needs to go back to the drawing board a little bit. I don't think anyone's all that surprised. I will say the Ferrari driver that impressed me the most was Carlos Sainz, because, oh my God, that overtake that he did on Charles was just, the epitome of late braking, and I loved every second of it. I think it was about lap 17. I went back and rewatched it quite a few times because it just was absolutely perfect. He just sent it, and I really have to give it up to him for that, because it was a thing of beauty.
It definitely was, because I couldn't concentrate on the video call I was during that time. I actually started that call at 10:05 so I can see the first lights out of the season. So it was just funny because like I would like try to peek when the person I was on the call with was talking to me and kind of like act. I mean, I was taking notes, but I was just kind of peering over, and then she noticed. I was like, sorry, my like phone keeps on going off, and I'm just trying to like ignore it, and I'm over here like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, because I just hear like outside like, and they're about to touch or like something like that, and I was like, dear Lord, just please finish the race, the two of you. I don't care where, just finish. So yeah, that was not easy to do. I do not recommend. But we made it through at least.
I would not recommend multitasking while watching F1. It's just sometimes a little too complicated. I personally cannot really do it. Give me a cup of coffee, maybe some breakfast. I can't do anything. Do not distract me. I am watching the race. But that Valtteri Bottas 52.4 second pit stop absolutely shattered my heart into a million little pieces. The flashbacks that must have given that poor man. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, Valtteri. I am so sorry.
Legend says Bottas may be still waiting on that pit stop right now. Poor guy. That was really rough to watch. I watched the replays and I just sat there and I was like, what is going on? So hopefully they get that all together too.
Well, luckily, I mean, the other half of the green highlighter duo actually did pretty well. Zoe started down in 17th, and he made his way all the way up to 11th, which is almost points. And the car, I mean, I guess we don't really know the true potential because, Bottas was, having a nap in the pit lane. But it looks like potentially it's a good, strong midfielder team. P11 almost to points. So hopefully that bodes well for the, rest of the year. And perhaps they can sneak a couple points, in the next couple races.
I absolutely love when Joe does well in races. I'm always like low-key like rooting for him. I'm like, come on, just a little bit more, like get it there a little higher. So when I saw he finished in P11, I got really excited because our fashion prince of the paddock deserves the praise.
Now, I noticed something on Fernando Alonso's steering wheel that is, at least to my knowledge, new on his car this year. And that is the TikTok logo that is on his steering wheel. I know I have talked about this on the podcast at least once, and that is the fact that I am a massive, massive fan of Fernando Alonso's TikTok era. It is a thing of frickin' beauty. But I love that he has now a much more prominent sponsorship with them on the car. He won, I think it was just TikTok Spain's like Man of the Year award. And well deserved, because it's just well deserved. But we also need to, again, I feel like we do this every time, give a massive shout out to the Aston Martin social media team for helping him run that account, because it's, I think, one of my favorite things on the internet, and I'm here for drivers getting on TikTok. Give me more, please, and thank you.
Yeah, that TikTok logo on his steering wheel is definitely new. I went and did a deep dive on old car pictures from last year, and it was actually the AstonMartin.com, just the website address on top of the steering wheel last year, at least at the start. I couldn't find newer-ish pictures, but it kind of makes sense because he had the TikTok logo on his car even last year because TikTok is an Aston Martin sponsor. So his TikTok era therefore also makes sense. Like Amy and probably the rest of the girls, I'm here for it. It's so hilarious to see that the oldest person on the grid has the best TikTok presence. Even Esteban, whose TikToks are amazing, Fernando still hasn't beat.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, sometimes I have to second guess. I'm like, wait, is this an edit or is it actually his account? So many times. And lately, I don't know if you've seen him on his little scooter. It's hilarious. It's very, very short. And so it looks like he just stole some kid's scooter and he's just running around causing havoc in the paddock. But, unfortunately, his race wasn't great. He scored points. But Lance, after getting, whacked by Nico at the start, did manage to work his way back up into P10 to get points for the team. So Aston Martin got double points this past race. And, Lance had a pretty good recovery drive, driving all the way from the back. It was pretty quiet. They didn't really talk about it on the commentary. They never really do. But yeah, no, it was a good race for Aston Martin to start off the season. Obviously not as great as last year, but that was definitely something that doesn't happen too often.
Now, as the Red Bull girl, I kind of feel like I'm also the unofficial Racing Bulls girl, or Visa Cash App, V-Carb, whatever the hell you want to call them. They're Toro Rosso in my mind. I'm sorry. Stick to your roots, people. We have to talk about Danny and Yuki. And Danny going, yeah, I don't really need to say anything. Y'all, I think the boys are fighting already, and I really don't know how to feel about it. We're race 1. Take it down a notch, please. We don't need to fight this early. No. Save it for race 5, please. At minimum.
Oh, they're definitely fighting. And I mean, it kind of makes sense why, as they're likely both on one hand gunning for Checo's Red Bull seat, because reminder, his contract is up this year. Granted, he could get an extension, who knows, but there's always rumors, especially if you have a sister team. And at the same time, they're also trying to hang on to their own seats, who are also up this year, because Liam Lawson is there as well, who did a superb job last year for the races he subbed in for. I mean, he got points in Singapore, for example, and knocked Max out of qualifying that time. And honestly, I feel like they're just both running scared, and that's why they're already fighting. Instead of putting that aside and just working together as a team to show them, hey, we both deserve our seats because we help the team.
Now, well, it seems like Racing Bulls is still kind of figuring everything out. It seems like Red Bulls really just got everything down to a science. And I really think a lot of that has to do with the absolute rocket that Adrian Newey created. Again, good Lord, that man came through with the car. I don't know if I want to That man impresses me so much. He needs a crown, something, a massive raise, because that car is just in a league of its own again. And I feel bad because while I love Red Bull as a fan, I also want competition. I want to see people actually giving Red Bull a run for their money. And it just seems like they're too good right now. And I don't know if I like it.
I think that's like, well, Formula One is also an engineering competition when it comes down to it. And I think it's not even that they just, kept the RB19 from last year. No, they changed concept again. And they just are striving to have like the fastest car humanly possible, which is, I guess, the point of Formula One. And it just so happens that Adrian Newey is very, very good at that. And I think it's also a combination of that, but also that they have a driver that just meshes perfectly with that car. Like, they become one when out on the track. You could see it. Max was, 20 seconds ahead of everybody, including his teammate in the same exact car. So Newey made the rocket ship, but Max is really the only one that can drive it to its full potential.
Yeah, my jaw dropped when I saw that 20-second gap between Max and Checo. It's just wild to think how far apart they are in the same car. But I saw like a video from a spectator that attended the race over the weekend on TikTok on the gap between Max in general with the rest of the grid, and like literally between like Max and Checo. In those 20 seconds, like people are like literally like looking around, like having like about to go back to their conversations. You see Checo, and then like I don't know how many seconds like go by, and then it's like Carlos and like the rest of the grid. It's insane to like just grasp that concept that like he knew he was able to like come up with that. He knows what the hell he's cooking in that Red Bull garage, and I mean, hey, I can't hate on that.
Now, this is going to surprise some people as the Red Bull girl that this is my favorite part of the entire race. That Carlos Sainz podium, y'all. Oh my God. That was the perfect way for him to start his year. And I am absolutely obsessed with it. For anybody who's a Taylor Swift fan, as somebody who's not a massive Swiftie, I feel like we're getting Reputation era Carlos right now, and I love it. Please show Ferrari that they may have messed up by letting you go, because I personally think that they did.
It was definitely a good way to remind Ferrari of the consistency that they are going to lose with him leaving next year. But at the same time, feels like he's ready to go somewhere else, and he's using this season as like his calling card to attract other teams.
Carlos said, let me show y'all Ferrari something real quick, and he showed literally all of F1. And I truly hope the season goes well for Carlos and Charles, because I am a Ferrari fan as well. But Carlos definitely deserves a seat for next year. That's something that I will die on that hill, because he's one hell of a driver. And at the end of the day, he was the only non-Red Bull driver to win a race in the 2023 season. And I love Charles. He's my like top driver. And I mean, come on now. Your teammate did that. At the end of the day, it does say something. So I love that he's showing his true potential. Just because so other teams can see what's going on and they can take that risk and everything. So I'm just excited to see how the rest of the season goes for him.
Also, fun fact, it is the first season opener ever in F1 history that saw no retirements. Even if Logan came slightly close with going into that runoff area at one time. And of course, Williams with their steering wheel.
Yeah, Williams has some work to do with their car that kind of needs to be done immediately. James Vowles always has his, very nice, calm little videos. But the stuff he was saying was absolutely wild. So I don't know how you could stay calm during that. They both started off the race pretty well. Like, they got off the line. I think Logan was up to like 13th at one point. But technical issues kind of ruined all of that. So the steering wheel basically had a mind of its own. and would change the brake balance of the car by itself, like without the driver even like touching it, randomly when they were going into corners. And I think that's what caused Logan to go off into the corners, that the brake balance just suddenly changed, sending him off, which seems concerning. Like, your steering wheel should not have a mind of its own. It should listen to what the driver and the engineers are saying. And so Logan even had to like switch out the steering wheel like during a pit stop to try and fix it. And then Alex also had issues with the steering wheel, with it freezing, and so like he couldn't change the settings properly. But this is also the first year that Williams actually has the screen embedded in the wheel itself. Past years it was embedded more in like the chassis, like so they could still see it, but it wasn't on the wheel itself. So I think they definitely have some work to do with that. I don't know if they have enough time to fix a lot of that before Saudi Arabia, but definitely, you know, for the next couple of races. And to add on to this, they also had overheating issues. So I don't know if any of you have seen like the photo of the car too hot flashing bright red on Alex's steering wheel. But, you know, as Williams themselves have said, but pain.
Speaking of Williams and their silliness, I actually saw a TikTok that the Williams admin did, and they're top tier. I love Williams TikTok alongside Aston Martin's. Like, those two, they know what they're doing. And it's this trend right now where it's like a little scenario with the sad violin, and like the next slide's like the little like sad hamster, and it's literally that sad violin with the hamster at the steering wheel with that picture of the car too hot on the screen. And I just love when the admins take an opportunity like that, or like the Bob Payne, to make such like a light or like a funny moment out of like a sucky situation, because it's just like, yeah, it sucked, but let's joke around. And speaking of car issues that need to be fixed, Mercedes, I'm looking at you. What happened to Lewis's seat? Like, how is he gonna go on the radio and say that his seat was literally broken? I cannot imagine how uncomfortable that could feel during the race, and having to drive like that for the remainder of said race. And apparently it had just like broken in the middle from what I saw online. I don't know how accurate that is, but again, I can just imagine how painful that is. And that man has back problems. So, you know, that guy definitely was doing some yoga poses Sunday morning to help out.
I just want to know how it broke. Like, did he hit something the wrong way and it just like caused it to snap? Like, did it just randomly freaking break? Mercedes, how? Explain yourselves. Like, seriously, explain yourselves. Especially because there's such little room in an F1 cockpit. Like, anything that has you in like minutely the wrong place must absolutely suck, because you've got like barely any wiggle room in those cars. Mercedes, make it make sense, please, for the love of all that is holy. Make it make sense. It's race 1. Your seat shouldn't break. Now, post-race, I feel like was when the boys like let their hair down and the sass was just flying. First things first, who the hell saw that video on Twitter of Yuki and Danny, where Yuki basically like drives in on Danny and then locks up, and they almost kind of make contact. Mind you, none of the situation, at least from what I've seen so far, makes it look like it was Danny's fault or Danny could have really done anything. It kind of looks like Yuki purposefully did some stuff. Maybe, don't hate me if I'm saying that, y'all. I really think that Yuki may have just shot himself in the foot a little bit on his chances with the big team. I don't see him losing his seat at RB, because I know Honda really likes Yuki and they're going to always back Yuki, which I totally get. But it definitely sent the F1 rumor mill a fly-in, it seems, because I also saw some fun things on the internet about Liam Lawson making comments. I love you, Liam, but maybe hold off a little bit longer, my guy.
Yeah, I definitely saw that all go down. Like, I saw the Twitter video, I saw the comments, I saw everything. And honestly, I was never a huge Yuki fan. I will admit that freely. But last year, after Pierre left for Alpine, I was like, okay, Yuki, you're not leading the team, but you're getting there. Let's keep this going. And then this happened. And oh boy. I mean, they were already fighting during the race. So this situation to me was just par for the course, honestly. Especially because they pulled the team order card earlier. And while it's a usual occurrence to pull team orders, the timing was weird. Because one, they pulled it during race 1. Usually team orders are more so placed when, say, one driver is way ahead in the championship or could get more points or something. But there were no points to be had. Like, no one has points yet. And also, on that note, they weren't in point scoring distance. So, like, what was the point? Granted, at least for my coverage, like where I watched the race on F1 TV, the message very much came through when Yuki was very close to Bottas. So it didn't actually make sense, like in terms of we heard the message and we saw how close they were for them to switch out. However, I will caveat that by saying oftentimes on broadcast, we hear radio messages way delayed. So it might have been that the gap to Bottas from Yuki was actually big enough to make sense for a switch, but who knows? It was weird either way.
So it was actually K-Bag that they were stuck behind. And it looks like it might be a situation, you know how last year everyone kind of got stuck behind Alex and like the Alex Albon DRS train? Looking like Haas might be pulling that this year. But I totally get Yuki's frustrations like during the race. Like he was within DRS range, like he was actively trying to fight to get that position when because it was over like a course of many, many laps. But I think that was also part of the problem. And like Danny was behind on the soft tires. And, you know, it was just a miscommunication, I think. But that's something you talk about in like your debrief when the race is done with your engineers, with your team. If you're frustrated, you know, let your team know after the fact, away from the cameras. You don't risk harm and damage to like your, you know, anyone, but specifically your teammate, because, you know, any damage, that's part of the cost cap, by dive bombing them during the cooldown lap. So like the race was already over at this point. You know, there's nothing that can even be done. So it just seemed really unnecessary to even take that kind of risk to do that. So like, I get like where Yuki was getting frustrated, but like, I think, you know, there's something to be said about managing your emotions, especially when you're hurtling through, you know, in a car at like, you know, 200 miles per hour. You know, that's definitely something that didn't need to be taken on track, that should have been discussed back with the team.
I personally feel like they should give all the drivers a good like 30 minutes to like cool down. So yeah, like in the post-race interviews, a lot can be taken out of context so easily. And it's just like a lot of emotions are just everywhere right after that race. And it's like the adrenaline's pumping and like, you know, I don't know. It's just, I feel like something could be done beforehand to avoid these kind of situations. Because I don't want to point fingers at either driver, but it's like something that could have been handled behind the scenes with just a team. I just feel like from both ends, it just could have been a lot better.
So my thing is that with how they showed the team orders to Yuki on the coverage, I'm wondering what the time duration was of when Yuki got the orders versus when we saw everything, because part of me feels like he was given those team orders because he had been battling K-Mag for so long and hadn't been able to make the move, that RB may have thought that, okay, well, Danny's on different tires, let's give him a shot and see what happens. And Yuki just kind of like was being stubborn and kept going. But I have to agree. I think some of the snarky comments could have been left out. But emotions run high, things get said, I guess.
Yeah, but from high emotions to something for my McLaren girlies. Because this is the first time in 3 seasons that McLaren scored points at the opening race. And further, for my Oscar fans in particular, he scored more points in this race than in the first 8 races combined last year. Mind blown, honestly. Shows great progression.
Yeah, and also, Max had an incredible victory, but this was actually his 55th win in F1. And it was his 5th Grand Slam as well, which ties him third with Michael Schumacher and Ascari for total Grand Slams, overall. So I think a couple more, and he might even be on, he'll be at the top. He'll be at the top of that stat as well. But what a way to start off the season. Grand Slam first race. Who knows how many more we'll have this year, but we'll see.
Does anyone want to wager on how many records Max and Red Bull will break this season? Anyone? It'll probably be pretty easy cash. And Maryland's legal. Just saying.
I will potentially take you up on that, Mel. You know I got you, girl. But did anybody else see the Jos Verstappen and Toto Wolff photos from the paddock? Because, oh my God, the F1 rumor mill went aflame. Oh my God. It was... The devil works hard, but the F1 rumor mill works harder, people.
Agreed. And honestly, it's funny because so we saw the photos earlier in the week, and then on Sunday, when we're recording this, a bunch of tweets came out where Joss was quoted saying that he thinks if Horner stays in the RB family, RB will fall apart. And that's why he's been talking to Toto. So, could we potentially see a Max move to Mercedes? Granted, Jos and Toto have been friendly, dare I say, for 20 years. So, it might have just been friendly chatter too. Who knows? Again, rumor mill is working hard.
It's insane to think about it because Chris and I were talking about that a few hours ago, how we're like, did you see Joss is over here talking to Toto? And I was like, we don't know what's going on. I was like, could you imagine the internet's reaction if that were to come true? Max Verstappen joins Mercedes for 2020, whatever year. We thought that Lewis news broke the internet. This would probably nuclear war on the internet with a lot of people. It'll be insane. Do I see it happening? Personally, no. But at the same time, I kind of do in a way. It would be an interesting combination if it's George and him, because we know their little drama. But again, it's F1. Anything can happen in this sport. Now, I don't know about you guys. I know me and Amy are very happy that Lewis Hamilton Fashion Week is back, baby. I look forward to his looks every race weekend. Me personally, I really love that Tommy Hilfiger overall look. Say what you want. I know he was giving teddy bear vibes. I loved it. And I also loved his Sunday look too. That whole quilted blanket kind of look. I don't know. That man's confidence just pulls everything well to get so good. So I always look forward to him. And now Joe. So I'm thinking someone has some competition for Fashion Week. So maybe the other drivers will pick up because it's nice to see when they take these fashion risks, if you will.
Also, did you guys see the Lando and Oscar post-race interviews? They really aren't beating the twins / Zach Brown's cloning factory allegations anytime soon. They're even starting to sound alike too. At the cadence and everything. It's kind of funny. But I mean, it just shows that Oscar's really he's out of his rookie season, but he's definitely feeling a lot more comfortable being an F1 driver now. And Sassy Oscar on Twitter is also back, making fun of George and, refuting Alex saying he sucks at paddle. But I think it's because we have the same grid as we did last year, is that we're able to kind of see how everyone is growing and, evolving over time, because there's no new factors. It's just the same people with different cars.
I'm going to take a 2-second thing to just plug that everybody needs to follow Oscar Piastri on Twitter because he's an icon. He tweeted this morning calling George Russell out and asking him if he nicked his barber, or nicked his barber's details, to be specific, because he's not wrong. George Russell, that haircut is looking very familiar, my friend. But the McLaren boys will never, ever, ever be able to escape those twin allegations. It's just gonna be what it is. But it is finally time for, I think, every PGP girl's favorite part of a race recap episode, and that is being able to do predictions for the next race that we have. So we're pulling out our crystal balls or our TikTok filters for predictions for the first time in 2024. Now, for me, I pulled out my pendulum and a crystal ball just for tradition's sake, at least this once. And for me, this got pretty interesting because my predictions gave me a twist I didn't really see coming, and this is how my top 3 shook out. Carlos Sainz in P1. I am not going to complain about a chili podium ever. P2, I have Charles Leclerc. Again, not really going to complain too much. Not the biggest Charles fan, but hey, bring it on. But my P3 is honestly one of my favorites, and that is Lando Norris. Yes, a version of a Carlando podium, and I am really here for that podium. Will it happen? I am not going to hold my breath, but I would love to see it happen. The thing where my predictions got a little bit more fun, for me at least, or more interesting, I'll say, is my DNFs, and that is a double Red Bull moment. And I don't know if my heart will do very well if that actually happens. But I think a whole lot of Formula One fans would probably be elated to see that go down. I think you might catch me on the floor, but that's okay.
Yeah, a double Red Bull DNF, don't see it happening, especially because Max hasn't DNF'd in over a season. But who knows? And while Amy is our pendulum girl, I'm our dice girl. Hence, of course, I had to pull out my 20-sided dice for the top 3 Saudi predictions on Saturday. And the dice has spoken. P1, we have Carlos. Do my dice and Amy's pendulums share a brain cell? One must wonder. P2, we have Pierre. Well, with how Bahrain went, and Alpine in general, I don't see it happening. And finally, P3, we have a Nico podium. While I wish for him to finally break the podium curse, the dice has predicted him on the podium before, and it hasn't happened. So I doubt it will happen this week. I'm sorry to say. Now, in terms of what I think will actually happen, because let's be real, my dice predictions are questionable this week. I think the Carlos P1 could happen, but as for P2 and 3, we'll likely see the Red Bulls on there. Though Amy's pendulum predicted a double DNF for them, it has me intrigued for that spice alone.
Now, I don't have any pendulum or dice, but I do have some predictions. I think Max will be P1, not just because it's Max, but especially because Checo won this race last year, and there's nothing more that he likes to do than prove a point, like he is the best driver. So I think he'll definitely be trying to not only win, but probably win with like a good margin. And the top teams, minus Max, actually look a lot closer this year with each other. So I'm hoping that we can get to see some good variety on the podiums. But for this race, I'd love to see Charles in P2. Ferrari, please fix his brakes. Like, we can't do that again. And Orlando P3 for next week's race, because he had a good, podium streak towards the end of last year, and their car didn't seem half bad. So maybe the Saudi track will, suit the McLaren more. But we shall see.
Like Casey, I have some delusional predictions to finish out our little prediction segment from the PGP crew. Purely off vibes. And it's early in the season to be the Lulu, but realistically speaking, we know Max will get P1. That's just kind of something I've just put in my mind, and I like to watch the rest of the grid because it's fun to watch those battles. And at the end of the day, the man is in the freaking rocket ship. Checo will also most likely be up there, probably in P2, because again, rocket ship, Red Bull. Makes sense. Now, for P3, I'm not so sure. Me being a Charles fan, I want to see him up there, but will Ferrari be Ferrari? We'll just have to wait and see. But overall, I'm just hoping for a bit more of an exciting race and a wild podium or top 10 finish. I like when there's like a mix up and it's not like the same thing over and over again. But again, it's only the second race of the season, so anything can happen and anything can turn around.
And to close out the episode, we have a driver quote for you this week. And that is actually the Danny quote we talked about already. I'm not going to say anything after the Yuki incident. Because honestly, it was, in my eyes, the spice that made the race worth watching.
Thank God we're back to racing. I know all of us in the paddock have been counting down the days. Even though this Saturday race really throws me off, and I think quite a few of us, what was your favorite moment from the weekend? Let us know on our socials. Everywhere we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except on Twitter or X. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. Thank you for joining us in the paddock. See you in Saudi Arabia. Bye.
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 Bye.